Welcome everyone to the live Q&A with Dr. Rob. If you're watching the recording, it isn't live for you anymore. Join us sometime, Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We'd love to have you participate and ask your questions live. So Dr. Rob, we have a first question. Betrayed partner discovered husband's addiction 2.5 years ago. They've got 2 young children. She discovered that he has just relapsed many times during the 2.5 years. So clearly wasn't really in recovery, but he never told me. So she's had discovery.
You're skipping a whole lot of stuff, right?
I know, but
long.
It's 3 giant parts. So I'm trying to, like this is like.
So wait, hold on. Maybe we can get to, here we go. So here's a question. We still have work to do to establish safety and are beginning to feel connected. We have a 90-day absence period before. At what point can we fully have healthy sexual or physical intimacy? If we were mutually aroused and decide to have sex purely for pleasure, 1, could it be detrimental for the addict's recovery? And 2, could it be detrimental to the partner's healing process? I think to me that would be, and then maybe the next part, if you want to take it. But I just wanted to answer those 2. How about that?
Yeah, because of practical reasons and considering our young children, I've been putting up with him. So
let me
I'm
get
putting
to
up with him and then having sex. So yes.
Well, I just want us to answer these questions just in general because they come up a lot, which is, is it harmful to the addict when we are sexual? And the answer is, I don't know. It depends on the individual person's situation. Here's what I can tell you. I do think boundaries need to be respected. What I mean by that is, as an addict, I wouldn't decide by myself. I would talk to my therapist, I would talk to my sponsor, or I would talk to my group, and I would say, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you folks think based on my recovery? I also, Tammy and I point this out a lot, but sometimes people think physical intimacy is about penetrative sex. And physical intimacy is about holding hands. It's about massages. It's about bathing together. It's about, so when you say, we are mutually aroused, decide to have sex, just because you're aroused doesn't mean you have to have sex. You could hold each other, you could be together, you could talk about what it's like to not have sex. So I just in general, I think slowing the whole process down, making it more about emotional connection and physical connection that isn't, we're aroused and we're going to have sex. Because I know for a lot of you spouses, for example, you wonder, are we thinking about someone else when we're having sex with you? And I think that slowing it down, and for me, if I were in that situation as an addict, I would say to you, I'm getting distracted. Let me slow down. I'm not thinking about us. Let's take a step back. There are many ways. I think part of the issues is that it's funny for addicts, we have so much sex, but we never really talk about it, especially with our spouses. So a little bit about the partner's healing, but in terms of if we have sex, will we go back to acting out? I don't think so. I think that when we're beginning to be sexual again, we might need to just lean more into the resources we have to see how it goes. And by the way, I could say to my therapist, we're gonna be sexual if you think that's a good idea, and then I'm gonna call you tomorrow and I'm gonna let you know how that went, or I'm gonna call my sponsor, we're gonna talk about it. Not talk about the details of what happened sexually, but how do I feel? Do I want to act out now? What did it bring up for me? Which may not all be things that they need to talk about with you, a spouse. That's the kind of stuff that we're for. I just wanted to go through the detrimental of the partner healing process. Do you want to, I'm sorry, let me back up. Go ahead, Tam.
No, I just figured out, and then they also typed in 1 and 3 go together. Number 2 that you're answering is not part of that. So the 8 months since D-Day, like it helps clarify. So you're answering 8 months since DJ. We in the active and part are actively working through our respective programs. Yes. We still have work to do to establish safety and are beginning to feel connected. We have completed a 90-day abstinence period before. At what point can we have healthy physical intimacy if we are mutually aroused and decide to have sex purely for pleasure? So you're answering that. And I wanted to clarify because
I was trying to get the.
Anyway. I did too. So it's my bad. So
I don't think it's detrimental. I mean, I know this comes down to something that's not visible, but what are the reasons that I'm being sexual with you? If you're angry at me and I feel very ashamed, am I having sex with you to make you feel better, to make you feel like I love you, to make you feel like I'm not having sex with someone else? What is my motivation? I would also say, are you getting emotionally closer? Are you being more intimate? Do you feel not around? I mean, being aroused, as a sex addict, I could be aroused by a rock if it's shaped the right way. But Tammy knows this, but
Mhm.
not that part, but about
No,
who we
I
work
don't.
with.
Yeah. But no, I
Um,
understand from a sex addict. Yes, I understand.
right. Bad day. That looks good to me. It's a mailbox. Oh, well, I was wrong when I looked from a distance. I have stories about that. But anyway, so I absolutely think that the thing to do, if it would be to talk to your partner about, I'm thinking about being sexual. We're thinking, what does your sponsor say? What does your therapist say? Do we need to go to a couple session? Let's us talk about it. You know, a lot of the guys will say to me, well, I'm in a period where I can't masturbate. Can you hold your spouse while they're pleasuring themselves? And there are all kinds of things that you can do to be sexual without necessarily. But I don't think it is detrimental to the addict's recovery unless they're not making use of their resources and checking in. I understand you don't want some stranger sponsored therapist to hear about your sex life. That's not what we need to check in about. What we need to check in about is, I really felt close and then I disappeared, and started thinking about other things, or now today I want to go do this and that. I mean, we need to check in with our recovering folks about that. I really like the second question because it comes up a lot. And, my answer, could it be detrimental to the partner's healing process for us to be sexual? And the answer is, I think, even more to the point, which is, why are you doing this? My number one answer is, why would you have sex with someone you don't trust? So if trust is not restored, if you think this person is still going out there and doing it, then if you're sexual with them, that you're being sexual for the wrong reasons. And I'll give you some examples. I've had spouses who later said, I wanted to have sex right away because I thought, well, that would keep him or her from going out again. In other words, if I have lots of sex with them, then maybe they won't want sex with someone else. That's not a good reason to be sexual. By the way, it's not a good reason. Another reason I hear is, I want to make sure that we're really connected and that the love is there. So I will feel reassured, the spouse speaking, I will feel reassured if we're sexual. That's not a good reason to have sex, to feel reassured. Reassured has to do with communication and consistency and honesty and all that kind of stuff. The last thing is just about that it's very typical for a partner, once they've really, I don't know about disclosure, but certainly once you've had a small D date, you found out a lot of stuff, you know what's going on. I've had a lot of partners who felt like they were iced over, become attracted to their spouse again, even though they heard about all these terrible things. And what they've said to me is, I feel like I know this person now. Now they're being honest with me. Now they're being open with me. Now I'm getting some of the things I wanted. Now I know what's been going on. And now I am attracted to them in ways I haven't been for years or whatever. And that's also not a good reason to be sexual. We're not sexual to prove anything, to learn about anything, to make anybody else feel better, or test anyone else. My answer is, go slow and see how that feels. You can hold each other, massage each other, and then see how that went. Did that make me want to act out? It doesn't have to be, we're not 19 getting in the backseat of a car. It doesn't have to, well, not that you did that, but nonetheless. So now, Tammy, I'm not, no.
Oh my God.
Tammy, are you
Okay,
having
now
some
I'm going to go back
memory?
to,
I don't
I'm
want to
not
talk
even going to
about
go there.
this.
Okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to slowly read 1 and 3
Okay,
because they're tied together and I don't, it didn't work what I was trying to do. Okay.
go ahead.
So I'm the betrayed partner. I first discovered my husband's sex addiction 2.5 years ago. Although I know my gut tells me, but I still want to know your opinion because we have 2 young children. I just discovered that my husband has relapsed. He's relapsed many times during the 2.5 years, but never told me. He felt bad about other relapses, but the recent one, he doesn't feel guilty because he doesn't consider it was a relapse, as there was a lot of connection with this woman who is also married. He enjoyed the conversation, etc. He thinks it might be something special. He doesn't know I already know all the information, and he swore on his children that he would not relapse and has cheated again. As much as it hurt, I actually felt calm and relieved because it confirmed I was not crazy, even though at the beginning he was doing whatever I asked him to do, give me his computer, etc. But slowly he took back control of his devices, stopped going to AA, and only seeing a coach twice a week now. Also, he seems getting more and more angry, lashing out at me, often blaming me for putting him through the difficult time and all the hard work. Oh my gosh. He doesn't feel being loved by me and doesn't feel any appreciation from my side for what he has done. So very often he made me He made me feel I was the addict and I was the one that hurt him. Because of practical reasons and considering our 2 young children, I've been putting up with him, but I felt it was getting more and more difficult for me to continue a life like this, especially now I know he has just relapsed. Is there any hope for this man? What should I do? So,
Well, just a real quick, and I want Tammy to jump in, is I hope that you're not sleeping in the same bed together. Sometimes all this is going on and it's just what you're used to doing, or you feel closer. If I don't, again, I don't sleep with people I don't trust. And even though it might be painful to have that separation, like I wish they were here, I think it's really important to begin to create separation, whether that's not eating together, not, if you hurt me, it's important for me to step back and take care of myself. I'm doing it for me. So I want you to take care of yourself and not move toward them while all this is going on, but move back, not to make them do anything, but to protect yourself. There's a lot here, Tammy, but it all kind of boils down to the same thing. What are your thoughts?
well, I look at, you keep using the term recovery, and I don't hear any recovery in that ever. I mean, you can't relapse if you're never really in recovery. You can go a period of time and it's just the addiction cycle. What really got me though was uh, he's blaming you for putting him through the difficult time and all the hard work. I'm like blame shifting. Oh my, gaslighting, like
Gaslighting.
screaming. Yeah, yeah, and doesn't feel appreciation from my side for what he does. Dr. Rob has talked often about his book Out of the Doghouse, and we have a work group for that, and that talks about like how do you rebuild trust and gain empathy, and he's got none. And this time it's different. Like this is the magical thinking. Oh, it's not really a relapse because I had this really great, connection with this person. So therefore it isn't cheating, even though she's married and you're married. I mean, like, yeah, this to me is so the delusional thinking of an active addict. So I'm really sorry for you. But I would give him, he isn't even at step one, on the, and I'm sorry, like we're really careful. Addiction is a mental health issue. We talk about it all the time. We understand we're in recovery, that we've got issues. But when people are working with coaches are not mental health professionals. So they cannot, I mean, it's very different work. Can a coach be helpful moving forward? And yes, but they cannot be looking back at, I mean, it's very different work. And, that's a whole nother topic.
And
But
let me just stop
but
on that really quick, Tammy. Coaches, the reason coaches came about is through the workplace, because people were being coached how to find a job and how to find the right job and how to do a resume. And that's sort of where the whole field came out of. And I do think what coaching is good for is if there's a specific goal that someone has, like someone who's not a sex addict. I had a guy who had, he was a little bit on the spectrum and he had some social issues and he wasn't able to date, or so his coach went out with him and talked to me. How do you talk to people? How do you, so when you have a specific issue, how to get a job, or I don't know how to take time for me, whatever the specific is, you can have someone who literally guides you based on, and it's, as Tammy said, here and now with an issue that's going on here and now. But that's not therapy. And it's, by the way, you don't have a recovery coach. They're called a sponsor. And you don't have to pay them. You just have to listen to what they say. So I did want to say something about coaching because it has its place. Unfortunately, I've seen a whole lot of people calling themselves coaches who they've been through AA, or they work with people in the workplace. They don't really know what they're doing in terms of psychology. And like Tam, these are difficult issues. I don't think you guys would be here if someone was just depressed, or if they weren't sure where they wanted to go to school. I mean, these are make it or break it relationship and child rearing issues. And so I would not want to pay the money to someone as good hearted as they were, even if they've been through this themselves, to be coached. This is not coaching. This is not a coaching issue. So I wanted to say that. And then Tam, I want to toss it back to you and about where you were.
Well, yeah. So and I hear it, honestly, I hear it a lot with betrayed partners that are getting coaches, and it's often for people who, have been through it before. So it's really more like sponsoring, but whatever. Okay. So, so to me, healthy boundaries, and like Dr. Rob said on the last one, being involved with somebody that is this abusive, and you've got little kiddos. So here's the other place I go with this is, you have children who are witnessing him lashing out at you, hurting you, not necessarily physically. I hope not physically, but the emotional pain that is caused to you by his consistent lying and active addiction. So I think I think hey, I'm going to be careful about how I say this, but and it's not your fault. Like, this is through no fault of your own, but like, how do you take care of you and the kiddos? What do you need to do so that they are, in the safest environment possible? And I know, some people can't leave or can't kick him out. Some people can. So I don't know what's right for you. I often say to partners, like, if you haven't already done so, consult a divorce attorney, just so you have information. You don't ever have to act on it, but then because the stuff that we make up in our head about, oh, I could never leave because of this, you might be able to, or if I leave, I'll get this, you might not, so just having that information could be helpful. But I hear somebody who really actually needs our residential program, probably to get that, no, seriously, to get that foundation of,
that was one of my first thoughts. This is a classic example of someone who, they don't realize it, but they're about to lose everything on some level, and they're
for the
playing with fire.
the fantastical relationship with this connection.
Well, that's a whole separate issue, but I mean, we can talk about that. I doubt anyway. In terms of this family, I don't think, and we say this to people, you say a lot, Tammy, which is, I don't think you quite know what you're looking at losing, whether it's a license or a relationship with your children, or you've been doing this 35 years, you actually like to be a grandparent, or, we minimize. And by the way, we assume that you're not going to take any real action. I don't think that he fully gets the situation he's putting his family through. I know he doesn't. And this is someone who, just to say it, resources or not, this is someone who really should be in residential treatment. And we don't say that all the time. I agree with Tammy that, I wrote this down. What is the cost to your children of your staying together in the same house? Tammy talked about active abuse. And I also think about what I hear adult people say as adult people, or hear adults of problematic childhood say, is there was so much tension in the house. They were always angry at each other. We thought it was our fault. Maybe we did something wrong. So, dad was gone. You should have been home for dinner. I mean, whatever it is, I think what Tammy's saying is you really have to look at both sides, and not only what, will it hurt them if we are not together, but how much are they having to deal with? Because, you all know that our children learn about what a healthy relationship is from us. And just because we're being nice and smiling at the dinner table and we're just focusing on them, kids feel everything. They know everything. And I've said this before, but one of the greatest gifts I think I could have gotten in my life is my parents had gone back and said, we kind of made some mistakes and we weren't the best parents. And so it's the talking about. The other thing is I wrote down the word abuse, because this isn't just my spouse is, and that's one of the reasons I also talk about residential. This person is blaming you, shaming you, making you feel like this is your fault. By the way, you're the mother of 2 young children, like you don't have enough on your hands. And I doubt you're getting a lot of help from your partner. So I would ask you also, what are you getting out of this relationship at this point? Like Tammy said, some people just don't have the resources, or whether time, money, whatever that is. But I think in terms of the stance that you have, how close you want to be or not close, or whether you're trying to do things to make him better or whatever, this defines abuse. It's not physical, but a lot of what I talk to spouses about is and they'll say, I wish I'd been hit, because at least then I could say, look what happened to me. But this constant, why are you leave me alone? And why are you bugging me? And I've tried, and now it's your fault. And that's abuse. And really what it's saying to you is there's something wrong with you for even being upset with me. And it's crazy making. So I would ask you, not only in terms of your children, but what is the cost to you to be in this situation? This man, Tammy, and I want to ask you, if you were living with someone who, I mean, your husband is not, but let's say he really was resistant to recovery and he was creating a lot of problems, and you saw him blaming you and ducking it. And, oh, and by the way, he's having an affair with someone else. And by the way, I will say more thing about that. If you think that he's not actively cheating and involved with this woman, then you don't get it. Whatever he says he might be doing or is thinking about or has feelings about, he's out there 3 days a week with her or whatever that is. So don't think that's not going on. Please don't have sex with him. Protect your body and your spirit from that, because then he just gets you and the other person. But anyway, I guess I feel a lot of like wanting to defend you or protect you, because as I read this, it's really well thought out and it's very respectful. But what's missing for me is I want to kill him. I can't believe I'm in this situation. Who would have young children at home and treat their mother like this? What I'm missing in here is your outrage, your indignance, and your sense of, I do not deserve to be treated this way. It's not that you can always act on those things, but I wish I heard it. Because I hear the abuse part and what should I put up with and what should we do? But I don't hear nobody gets to treat me and my children like this part.
So I'm going to answer that because I was in that situation, not in my current relationship. So I had a 2.5-year-old who said, "Daddy mad at you again, mommy?" Big eye opener. And I thought, what am I doing? What am I modeling? But it's like the frog in the water. Like, he was amazing before I married him, and then he wasn't. And so I won't go into the details, doesn't really matter, but I know the indignance, I didn't have it until I did. And so I honor where you're at. You're asking the right questions. But it was like, is there hope? Is there any hope? Yes, if he gets the right help.
Right.
But if he's not willing to do that, if he's just going to keep blaming you, then no. I mean, we know lots of people who stay in their active addiction forever because they choose not to do something different. So, I say this all the time, until the consequences of change, the pain of the change is less than the pain of staying the same. And right now he's got someone on the side and can blame you. And, so he is not motivated right now. He hasn't lost enough. But Dr. Rob has talked before, people that are on their third marriage and, they're like, I didn't have to lose my first marriage if I'd gotten the help that I needed. And, Dr. Rob just did a podcast with Dr. Ken Adams about adult children of sex addiction. So there's a book finally about, about that, ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, has been around, but this is specific for sex addiction. And so, so it really is important for us to, to make sure that we're thinking about, how do we take care of the kiddos in all of this? So.
Yeah, I feel badly for you, because I think what you're trying to do is keep your family together. And, one of the things that I say, especially the men in residential treatment, is I actually feel more hopeful for men who are your husband's age, because if he gets it together, he could be a very, very good father. And these children could learn so much from him. And the two of you, even if you're healing, they're going to learn something from you. But the fathers that I work with who have kids that are older, teen on, and I say to them, I'm really sorry, but it's too late for you to have that meaningful, early developmental experience with your child, because they're too old now. And they're 9 or they're 14 or they're 30. And I feel badly for you, the dad, that you missed. You were so focused on your addiction that you missed one of the most precious times in life, which is having a couple of little kids running around and adoring you and playing with you. And he would rather go F his married friend than focus on the most important thing in life, which is you and your family. And so, yeah, I don't think he also realizes what he's missing out on, which is, I think this is in some of the videos or whatever. I say that, I think this is worth saying. Some of us grow up in a home, things are reasonably good. We get to be adults, we push our family away a little bit, and then we go establish our own home and our own family, and we reconnect with the other one, and that's how it goes. The people that I work with, the addicts, they leave their home and then they establish their new home, and then they run away from that one. And so rather than facing what I need and the real meaning of my own relationship, I'm still out there looking for something else. And I feel sorry for them, because they're never going to find what they're looking for, and not just related to the addiction. So many of the people I work with, what they want is right there behind them, but they're not willing to look. And this is not someone who's really willing to say, oh my God, I have 2 young children. And do you know what that means? And I have this kind wife who's really doing double duty. Anyway, I'm indignant for you. That's what I think's happening. So I'll leave that one to you.
Okay. The next question, betrayed partner here, under 2 years since discovery, SA husband of 42-year marriage is doing all of your recovery recommendations. His sobriety is November of 22. One of his compulsive acting out behaviors was to masturbate outdoors, hidden in trees in a local park. It freaks me out to think that he could have been seen and potentially sued for trauma damages if stumbled upon by a woman and or young children. Because of this, I've asked that our financial assets be transferred into my name only in the event that he relapses and the scenario actually happens. At least that way I won't be left destitute because all of our assets now are jointly owned. He says he's in good recovery and it won't happen again, and my concerns are unfounded. I seriously don't know what to think and I feel stuck. Do you have any suggestions on how to move forward?
Well, let me just say first that how I'm doing in recovery today is no measure of how I'm going to do in recovery tomorrow. It is one day at a time. I could go act out tomorrow, honestly.
Me too.
And so for me I always worry. Like when someone leaves treatment, I say, how are you doing? How do you feel about leaving? I've got this. I worry about them. I really do, because we've never got it. It's an ongoing process of growth and paying attention and all of that. When someone says, I'm really worried about leaving and I hope that I'm able to do this, I feel much better about their future. So any spouse, to all of you who hear from one of us, oh, I'm doing really well and my recovery is great, so I can do this, or so we can do that, or that's not how it goes. You will see change in us over time. Me reassuring you that I'm doing well is like me telling you I'm going to the grocery store when I'm really going to a massage parlor. You can't believe what I say. And that makes me worry. I don't believe him. I don't know what he's doing, but it doesn't make me comfortable. But I want to be more clear about the situation you're in, because I don't think you really understand it. What he does is called exhibitionism. He exhibits himself in a public place to get something out of that. And generally, exhibitionists actually do want to be seen, because what they get off on is the fear or the disgust, or they feed themselves on the reaction of the other person. So I don't want to just masturbate under a tree. I mean, maybe somewhere in, I don't know, but not today, maybe somewhere in the hills of Italy. But seriously, I don't exhibit myself because I just enjoy myself when no one's around. I exhibit myself because I want to elicit a response. So let me also tell you that this woman's trauma has nothing to do with what's going to happen to your family. This is illegal behavior. Your husband is going to be arrested. I don't think it's going to be a civil suit. I think this woman's going to sue your family because the law is behind her, and he will end up in jail. And if it happens more than once, it gets really, really bad. So I would be more worried about, and let me say this also, and I'm sorry to say this, but it is absolutely true. I don't know, Tammy can give her feedback. When you get into beyond sex addiction and start to move into offending, the most compulsive areas that I see at the lower level, I'm talking about violating people, rape, all that stuff, but the sort of next level up, and Dr. Carnes talks about this, is exhibitionism and voyeurism. They're the sort of dip into illegal. Some people dip into the internet and what they're looking at there. But in terms of lie behavior, the next step up from addiction is this kind of misdemeanor offending, if you will. The problem with exhibitionism and voyeurism is they are the most compulsive behaviors and very difficult to stop. So I am concerned that not only you've been reassured, but I'm concerned that you don't understand, or maybe have not appreciated that this is a legal issue, and that your husband will be taken out of that park with handcuffs on his. And by the way, if he has any kind of license, he's a teacher, he's a social worker, he's a doctor, he's a lawyer, he will not, any kind of arrest like that goes right to our boards, right to our organizations. He will no longer be practicing or working or an accountant. I mean, any of us who have licenses. So I'm glad you took control of your finances, maybe not because of the reasons you think, but because this person that you're involved with doesn't seem to understand the depth of the problem or how to manage it. And by the way, I also like the fact that you did something. You said, I'm going to do something to protect my family, not I'm worried about him or what's he going to do, or you actually took a step. And, Tammy said some people consult a divorce lawyer. Doesn't mean you're going to divorce, but knowing your rights, knowing and having that feeling of, okay, I did something to protect myself. So, by the way, if I get, I'll stop in a second. If I get arrested, for exhibitionism, it goes in the newspaper. It goes up online. Someone takes a picture, forget getting sued. That woman takes a picture of your husband with his whacking out in the park. That'll go on the internet everywhere. So I'm actually more concerned about public exposure, legal issues, all of jobs and career than I am about someone else suing me. So Tammy, I turn it to you.
Well, but he hasn't agreed to this. He's gaslighting her and saying, "Oh, I'm good now. Don't worry about me." I just said that to somebody
earlier.
Then
she needs a lawyer.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I 100% agree. You know what? If he's so good, then it won't matter. You'll have the paperwork, and it will never have to be an issue. But I'm with Dr. Rob. This is it, particularly 42 years you've been married. This probably predates, like your relationship with him, and he has less than 6 months. Let's just do the math. That this is high dopamine behaviors for him, and now and I don't hear that he's come to treatment. He's working with a CSAT therapist. So he's been doing some of our stuff, great, but like this is a high degree mental health issue. Getting a solid assessment. The clients that come to our treatment program, they have 4 to 5 hours of assessment, because we need to understand not just the problematic behavior, but the underlying issues. That's important because it's a symptom, it's a maladaptive coping mechanism, but like it feels like it's the problem, but it's not the problem. It's just how the problem is coming out. So you protecting you, assets, whatever you need to do for but don't believe that he's got this and he's all good. Like this is there's more, and the other shoe is going to drop. I've been in recovery for decades, so has Dr. Rob. You know what? I never say I got this. I never say that. I go, I have today. I have a daily reprieve. That's all I got. So
I do want to add one thing, and Tammy, yes, we are aligned because there's a reason we say one day at a time. There's a reason why I hate to say this, Tammy, even at our age, we continue to check into people, meeting, all that stuff, because it doesn't go away. But I want to say something to SJ, who wrote this. It's one thing to say my husband or wife is a sex addict. It's shameful, it's awful, it's painful, but we have this whole route. We have all these communities. We have things that, there are ways to heal, as there are in this situation. But SJ, I think what you need to say to yourself is my husband is a sex offender. Because when you engage in non-consensual, that woman didn't ask to see that thing, and illegal behavior, you have crossed line into offending. And so even the idea that it's not that it isn't compulsive. I mean, it may be an addiction or not, but the compulsive piece is very strong in this kind of offending. If you look at arrest records and histories, exhibitionists and voyeurs get arrested over and over and over again. He would have to be deeply committed to working a really good program, or else he's going to go to jail. And I really want you to say to yourself, wow, I lived with a sex offender, and see how that feels. 42 years of marriage. By the way, I would not be surprised if he's been arrested before. I would not be surprised if he hired a lawyer at some point, because I've heard this before, and just made sure it all got taken care of and you never knew. I've certainly heard that before. Last thing is, again, this is, for those who have resources, this is an inpatient, residential, go to Seeking Integrity or somewhere else kind of case. If this man doesn't get it together, he's going to be arrested. You've been married 42 years. How old is he? 62 at least? I'm turning 62 in a few weeks, Tammy. And I want to say that I can't imagine wandering around parks, taking it out at 62. And is his family going to want him around grandchildren?
Kids and grandkids, yeah.
Once he gets arrested, is he going to be welcome at Thanksgiving? Again, I think what you describe is an addict who really doesn't understand the degree of the problem. This is a huge, and 42 years. So how to move forward. I think first you need to embrace the problem for everything that it is. Second, I think you need to look at the reassurances, and the it's going to be fine is not really true. And by the way, one more thing about that. isn't it interesting that you discussed separating your finances or transferring? And then he said, but I'm good. I wonder if maybe he doesn't want you to do that. And in response, he's trying to gaslight you and tell you, no one's recovered. And certainly not someone with this history. So you called Tammy, Tami, at Seeking Integrity. We will find you support, books. We'll find you information about offending, because that's what's going on here.
Okay. Next question. Can the brain of an SA really recover, or is it just a matter of using tools to keep the addiction under control?
Well, that's not a one answer question, but I will say, I was just saying this to the guys, because I was at Seeking Integrity talking to the guys about this very issue, and where our addictions come from and how they evolve is from a very early part of our brain. It's the same part of our brain that involves impulse. It's the same in part that it drives a desire to mate, our desire to eat. It's very basic stuff. And how we connect to other people is learned very, very early. It's in this primitive part of our brain. Once we're about 7 or 8 or something like that, kids kind of become more, they abstract more. By the time they're 11, they're taking algebra, whatever. Kids are not really able to remember what happened to them in the past. So there are certain developmental pieces that are very basic, like, do I trust people? Am I important? Things that are very meaningful, and they get burned into the brain. What we say, when things are wired together, they fire together. So if I, let me be more simplistic. I grew up in an environment where there was craziness. I never knew what I was going to find when I got home. I never knew who was going to be who, drinking, whatever. And I learned that I could not trust that when I went home, things would be calm or my needs would get met. It's very difficult for me to trust today because that was such an early experience. So the answer in technical terms is no, we never recover. We have a chronic mental health issue, just like depression, just like anxiety, that in the right circumstances, if we're not attending to it, we will default to that. We will always default to that. That's why we need to consistently and constantly work on this. The second half of your question, that's how I stay in recovery. I will never, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, something happened. I was thinking, oh, I know what I should do. I should go to a massage parlor. I've been doing this for 30 years as a professional and longer than that in recovery. It still comes into my head. But now I have tools and I have practiced them. And so when I have a desire to act out, I say, oh, isn't that interesting? There must be something going on with me. I probably need to reach out to someone or go to a meeting. It doesn't mean I need to go do it because I have the tools to manage. And I understand it's not that I'm horny. It's not that I want to go have sex. It's that I want to run away. It's the same as an alcoholic saying, well, maybe just a drink or two. Anyway, so my point is that, yes, the tools that we use help us to manage it. And over time, of course, it's not in our face. We've learned to put it in the back. We've learned to understand. We've learned to see someone attractive on the street and look away. We are not trying to fill ourselves up with that kind of intensity. We're trying to avoid it. And so, yes, one of my sayings is that, life in recovery should just be one notch above boring. What Tammy was saying about dopamine and the intensity is that we are looking for that intensity, that our lives as addicts go up and down and up and down. And then we drag you guys with us. It should be kind of like this, a straight with someone gets born, someone passes away, but it's not because my brain got better. It's because I learned how to live with my vulnerabilities, and not be ashamed of them and hate myself, but learn how to manage them and recognize them as the very strong partners that they are, and they will wrestle me to the ground unless I am actively working on it. So my computer stopped charging, so I'm going to go under my desk and see why. But Tammy, I'm sure you
I do have a thought on that. I will share another little personal thing. My husband and daughter, my husband is an amazing man. This is number 2. We've been married for decades. He's amazing. And my daughter, who's now an adult, the same 2.5-year-old, this was a while ago during COVID. So relatively recently, but I said something and they both looked at me with that kind of, and and I could tell that they were questioning. I was like, this is how my brain works. Like, I have to think differently. I have to go, oh, is that right? And I check in with people, because if I'm thinking something and I'm going like, that doesn't seem quite right, but I have the ability to go, that doesn't seem quite right. And when I go ask somebody, they'll go, if I couldn't figure out why it didn't seem quite right, they'll let me know. But so we don't get rewired, and they don't flip a switch and they go, now you're fixed. It's like, but we learn to have the tools so that we don't have to do things the way we did, like Dr. Rob was talking about. We don't have to go act on those things. The other thing is, if I mess up, if I do something that is not how I would want to do it, then I have tools to use to act in my integrity. I can make amends and I can move forward, so that I don't have to bear the shame of that and use that as a reason. Oh, he left. I think his computer just pooped. So let me see. I have to restart my computer. He'll be back in a minute. Sorry, or we'll run out of. So he's going to be back. So, but that's the gift of recovery, which actually is multiple gifts of recovery, is that we learn to do things differently, and we have the support to do things differently. We don't have to continue to, I occasionally get, people will go, oh, 12 step is about God. And I'm like, if you don't think you had a higher power, you think again, because you're in our addiction. We do whatever it tells us to do without even questioning it. We are down that path. And so to be able to have that ability to go, I get to choose in this, and I can choose to do something different. That is meaningful, but that's what recovery is too. So I'm watching for Dr. Rob. Oh, there he is. Just like that. It's magic. Okay. So I hope you can see this now, because like it was in the answered already. So hopefully you can see it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. For some reason,
I know
we've had so much rain and our plugs are, anyway, we're going to have 3 inches of rain tomorrow. Okay. I can't, you'll have to ask.
So I will read it. My husband started day one at a treatment center on Sunday. We've been married for 37 years. 35 of those years he was using porn and maybe doing other things. While I want our marriage to work, I'm really scared that he may have deep-seated sexual deviation besides porn and hurts innocent people. I can't sleep thinking about this subtle yet disturbing past behaviors.
Well, I have to say, number one, if you want to send someone to a treatment center, we run one, and I am very involved with it on a regular basis. So just to say it, we certainly appreciate, if one of the reasons we're able to give so much away is because if we get enough people who simply show up for treatment, that pays for blogs and podcasts and all this stuff. So just to say it. Okay, so can you give me I'm sorry, since I don't have in front of me.
So I know you don't. So while I want our marriage to work, she's got fears about what she doesn't know. Let's boil it down.
Of course.
She's got fears to that it boils down to sexual deviation besides porn that hurts innocent people, and it's preventing her from being able to sleep. She's so disturbed and distraught. So a partner, now he's at treatment, and how what can we share with her to help her?
How long have they been together?
37 years, long time.
So I don't know you, but I can say that your entire world has been completely turned around. Everything you thought was true may not be. Everything you thought wasn't, your world, 37 years, and all of a sudden you realize you didn't really know the person you were with, or they had this whole secret life. So that in itself is a huge trauma. You can never look at them the same way again. You're not going to. So part of what's going on is you are in crisis. You are going through a crisis. Your spouse was so troubled that he had to go to a treatment center. So obviously things are overwhelmingly difficult. I don't know, I don't know what deviant sexual behaviors are. I know what illegal sexual behaviors are. I know what are things that turn people on that may not turn most people on, but I don't know what deviant means. So if your fear is,
it would hurt innocent people, to me, that would be illegal,
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'll tell you this, we see, I don't know, 100 something people a year. It's very unusual, I think, for us to get a meaningful sex offender. We might get someone who's dipped into exhibitionism. We might get someone who's been looking at inappropriate behavior online, but it's very rare for someone to, in other words, their life probably hasn't been functional enough to get to the point where they could come see us. And also, we don't take people who have a profound offender history in that way. So I understand. So I'm saying two things. One is I want to be somewhat reassuring that it would be unusual for someone to come into treatment with that profound of a problem and they haven't dealt with it earlier. The other thing is that I hope you talk to some spouses, some other women, I assume here, or join one of the free groups. Your head is spinning 100 miles an hour. And, I don't know about you, but when something's, I tend to be someone who thinks of the worst. I'm a glass half, and that works for me, because if, like my accountant, he thinks of the worst. He says to me, "Oh my God, you're probably going to owe a lot of money." And then when he's done with my taxes, he said, "Well, actually, you don't." And I think he's so wonderful. So, when I am in a crisis, I go to the most scary thing that could happen. And I think you have to go with what you know and what you have in front of you and trust that the professionals will support you in whatever way is needed. Nobody wants someone who's going to hurt someone else running around there out by themselves. If you know something specific, you should call the treatment center and say, I know about this. He was arrested. This happened. You need to know this, or I found this in his drawer. But otherwise, I think you have to, and this is a tough one, trust the process. There is a process that's playing out, and it's obviously one that you are following in the right ways. Now you just have to see where it goes. And thinking the worst doesn't mean that what's happening is the worst, but I understand thinking it. Yeah, Tammy?
Well, it was interesting because last Friday, I did a webinar with Debbie McCrae on fear, and my meditation as part of my recovery process was also on fear. So, and one of the things we use is false evidence appears real. And so it's one of those things where you don't know anything more right now. So you can make up all kinds of things in your head. I actually am the opposite of Dr. Rob. I have to be very concrete. What do I really know? And this is what I know right now. And I can make up and catastrophize something else. But I don't know. I'm prepared. Believe me, I'm always flexible and prepared. I think for partners, I tell people when when the clients are coming to us, take a deep breath, do self-care. If a client is at a treatment program, guess what? They are not your responsibility ever,
Right.
but for the moment, it's like, gosh, do what you need to do to take care of you,
This
with
is your
friends.
time
Right. Don't
to,
talk about him or the addiction or whatever. Like, go have lunch with a girlfriend, do something that just is like a good nurturing
right,
thing for
go play with
you.
your grandkids.
Yeah. I mean, whatever it is that feeds your soul and can set aside the worry. I was just talking to somebody the other day about worry. It's like a rocking chair. It'll keep you busy, but it doesn't get you anywhere. And that is true. And so, but it's one of those things where it might have been my mom. I don't remember, but it's one of those things where, like right now, a certain thing, and he's in treatment to get help for it. Great. That's a good start. More will be revealed, and you will have support so that you can handle anything that you don't know that you need to know. But right now, you got enough on your plate just with what you know. So, but he's in
And
treatment. That's a good thing.
yeah, and I tell a lot of spouses, he's in a safe place. He's being monitored. He's being managed. There won't be any crises. Certainly there's a lot of people deal with it, at least in our treatment program. So this is a time when you don't have to worry. Where is this person? Are they looking at the porn? What are they doing? Because they're not. They're being monitored. And so Tammy's right. This is a time, whether it's getting some good therapy, reaching out. I mean, don't worry about him. Worry about you. What is
Mhm.
it like to have your whole life disrupted at this point, when I would imagine you're thinking retirement, at least I am, and rocking chairs and travel, and you're presented with this? How devastating is that for you? Take care of you, learn, sure, join groups, sure, get a therapist, but also, go get massages, take a weekend off, take care of yourself. This is a trauma. Any spouse will tell you it is a trauma at best. Consider yourself, having been in a really bad accident, you need to take care of yourself. You need to, whatever it takes. You are first now. And talk to other recovering spouses. They will tell you too. I was worried that it was kids. I was worried that it was whatever, until they learned more and they had more support. So your worst fears will probably not be realized, but even if they are, you need support. So.
Okay, we got a bunch of questions. So thank you for bringing up children and teens. What resources do you have for them? Any workshops, books, workbooks, or groups? Thank you.
So
And
Tammy,
we
can you
don't
type it?
really, yeah, we don't really have, I can type, but yeah, but like it's, adult, like the podcast you did with Dr. Ken was adult children. It's like,
Do we? Well, I will
so,
tell you this because I've looked at the book that he wrote, and
mhm.
one of the things that Dr. Adams did was he interviewed lots of adults, right? But he also talked to them about what it was like when they were young and what did they need and what didn't they. It was just not just. So this is a book about adult children of sex addicts, but you don't talk to an adult child unless you ask them what it was like growing up. And
Oh, that's
so
true.
he had questions that, like, when you were 11, when you found out, when you were, and so there's information of, because Tammy, you're right, it is an adult book, but it's also about, I found out at 15 and my mom told me, and where that left me as an adult is. So I think that I'm so grateful there is a book for this, and now there's a place to talk about it. And I actually think he's talking about doing a workshop or a seminar, something around this. Anyway, there was more to that question than just that, Tammy, I
It
think.
was any workshops, books, work groups, or for them. So
Maybe Dr. Adams. And again, I
yeah,
want to tell you folks, please, because this comes up, please don't tell your children. Please don't tell your children where their father puts his penis. And I say that in such a direct way because children should never at any age know about their parents' sex life. I don't want to know. I can understand mom and dad are having problems. I can understand that, I can understand a lot of things, but I don't want to know about my parents' sex life. And once I know, I can't unknow it. And one of the things I see with some of the adult children is, because I hear this a lot, is, well, now I doubt my relationship choices. Well, now I wonder if my husband is cheating. Well, now I wonder if I can trust anyone that I date. It becomes their issue in ways that you might not want it to. I've had people say, well, shouldn't I tell them I'm a sex addict? Tell them you have problems. Tell them you've been working on them. Tell them there's a lot of pain in your relationship. But unless they actually saw the porn or saw you talking to the girlfriend, don't tell them. And spouses, it's so tempting when you're angry to say, well, I'm going to tell our kids. Or the problem is that's, they will not unknow it. They often take sides. How could you do this to mom? Which isn't helpful for healing a relationship. And as I said, it is a scar that you can't unscar. And so I'd be very careful about going to them with any kind of anger or wanting to get their support or even wanting them to understand what your dad has done. That's not their job. Their job is to understand that we have parents who have issues and they're working on it, and then take your anger and your upset and go to another adult and take it to them, because we can handle it and they probably can't.
and it really, I hear often that it has divided a family where the kids one took dad's side, one took mom's side, or there's blaming of mom. I mean, it doesn't go well, or how somebody thinks it. Well, they should know. No, they can know that there's some turbulence, there's some issues going on. But I did put, so it's called A Light in the Dark, The Hidden Legacy of Adult Children of Sex Addicts. I put the Amazon link, but I also put the link to the podcast so you can listen to that. I think that will be a good start. So okay, next question. And I think you can see this one now.
Yeah.
So do you think contentment and being content with what we have can help with sex and love addiction and not wanting something or someone else? I noticed recently that it's helpful to just be grateful for what I have. Making a gratitude for the last 8 years has helped. I want to go, yes, because yeah, I mean, like I think about how fortunate I am and how grateful I am. I should be dead in my 20s, like really, so the fact that like the stuff is nice. I do appreciate, stuff. I like fast cars, but at the
He
end of the
does.
day, I do. But you know what? Like, what I really care about? My relationships. I have people that I care about deeply. I have people that care deeply about me. And, I have such gratitude for that. And yes, a gratitude. I cannot be, miserable or unhappy or, feeling resentment if I'm feeling about gratitude. Like they cannot coexist. So, yeah, it puts me in a different place, and I am content often, mostly. If I'm irritable and discontent, then I know that I need to go work on my program a bit. Restless, irritable, and discontent.
Or your husband says,
you might want to go to a meeting.
Right. So I
that.
just want to break this down a little bit. Of course, the lack of stress at being content with yourself and your life is a huge weight off the shoulder of an addict. But we don't tend toward comfort and what was the other word? Comfort and content with what we have. I mean, it's part of our disorder that we're always looking. I talked about running away from home, that it's very easy for us to want to look elsewhere. It's not for wanting someone else. It's really about wanting to run away. And I don't think, I agree that, how do I say this? I am so content and I'm so content with my life that I don't want to lose what I have. And I think in that way, it is a contributor. The more deep in my relationship is, the more deep my friendships and family are, because I'm present and available. I now have something that I value deeply and don't want to lose. And when I was active addiction, it was, how can I get that family out of my way so I can go do what I want to do? Now I deeply understand the meaning of family and home. And that makes me much less, it's not that I'm content all the time, but I know what I have and I know how important it is. And boy, every time I walk into a 12-step meeting and I hear someone who's new and I hear their program, every time I go to treatment and it's seeking integrity, one of the guys says, well, let me tell you what happened in my relationship. I'm reminded of how grateful I am. I'm not happy they're in a bad situation, but I understand completely that I could be there tomorrow. I do want to say one more thing about that, which is, I had a family member pass away about 1.5 years ago. And I did a whole inventory. She was in my dreams. I thought, well, I better write about this. And when I wrote about it, I realized that the hardest part for me at my end was I wish I'd shown more gratitude. I wish I had not said, oh, well, I can't believe you said that. And, why are you like this? And there is so much pettiness that is not worth, it is easy to get caught up in. And then I forget how important this person is in my life. So I think a gratitude list every day, or picking something every day. But the bottom line is that our home is our foundation of our lives. And I cannot be grateful enough to have one, no less not appreciated. So anyway, we're fortunate, Tammy, and it's not luck. We worked hard at it. But contentment's kind of nice, I have to say.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have sought that in active addiction. We weren't looking for content, because we're looking for intensity. Yes,
boring.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Boring.
There's more good questions. Can we do at least one more?
I know.
Okay.
Let's do the one on the bottom because it's shorter.
Okay. How can you determine if an SA is truly on a path to real recovery or just checking boxes? Does the SA's reaction to questions regarding their commitment to recovery give any hints on how serious they are about it? Defensiveness, deflecting, self-righteousness, etc.
Well, I was just talking to the guys about this. I did a lecture of Out of the Doghouse for our clients, our patients. And one of the questions was, how do I handle an angry spouse? I just can't help myself. I get defensive. I get angry. So those kinds of responses may not necessarily have to do with how much recovery I have. As I often hear from you guys, how come he or she has 1.5 years in recovery and they're still not a very nice person? Working on not being what is the opposite of offensive? Not being defensive, on owning my stuff, on not getting on my high horse, that can take a while. Stopping the behavior, that's actually not the most difficult part. The most difficult part is gaining empathy and compassion for others, and also learning how to tolerate the fact that I do want to defend myself and I do want to look good to you and I don't want to feel your anger. So I will, say it's not this, it's that. So the real path of recovery to me is in the beginning, who's taking responsibility for my recovery? What I worry about is you spouses who are saying, did you go to that meeting? Have you been to therapy? Not your job. we should be saying, I went to that meeting, or I'm coming home from, so when you find yourself pushing the recovery uphill, they're not on a real path. Can we check boxes? Sure, but then you don't see us changing. You don't see the consistency of what we're doing. Tammy, I know there's more in this question, but can I pass it to you? Because I'm probably not there.
No, I think it's all about actions. If you are really seeing defensiveness, deflecting, self-righteousness, that is the opposite of recovery. Now, you didn't indicate how long it's been. If this is very early in recovery, unfortunately, that's, part and parcel with that. That would be out of the doghouse work group would be a good one for learning how to learn how to have empathy and regain trust. But it's all about action. So it would be, the Thanos check-in. I've shared that previously. You can email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. But that's a good check-in for the two of you that's working on building communication. Dr. Eddie and Drew Boa I loved it because they played it out.
Tammy, you have to start with the beginning of a sentence and go to the end.
Oh, I know. I get ADHD. Sorry. Yeah. So on our webinars, we had a webinar with Drew Boa, acted as the betrayed partner, and he actually did a really good job. And Dr. Eddie Caparucci, and they played out, some of like a defensive response, and then played out a better response that would be helpful. So that's posted on our website. And so it's learning, and we don't learn to do it. Even the guys that come to our treatment program, which the clinical team is so good at helping, but they're not magically fixed. There's no magic wand that they, go through the car wash and now they're all good. It's not, but they'll have the tools to use to do things better. And if he's working on accountability, and Debbie McRae did a really good webinar on accountability, and she talked about 10 things that you will see for accountability. I would highly recommend you watch that together, and see. And it's all about a plan. And I often say a failure to plan is a plan to fail. And so getting a plan and how he is going to do things differently, it can be adjusted as go, I'm making progress in this area, or this one I'm not doing so great. That's what we we have to learn to navigate. But we can, if we're committed to if we're committed to the recovery, but we don't get to go back and blame you or be defensive. Like, honestly, the better, I feel like I'm curious about why you're bringing that up. You must be experiencing some mistrust in me. Wow, what a difference then. Why are you asking me this? Just saying,
I want to add to this one thing, which is I may today, if the lights are changing, I may still today be defensive and deflect and self-righteous. And as I said, you can be in recovery for a while and do well, but that doesn't mean you've become a better person. Becoming a better person takes longer. But one thing that I think would tell me this person's recovery is if I were you and I said to them, I feel like you're being self-righteous and you're deflecting, and that sounds really defensive. I'm going to drop this. And let's talk about it tomorrow. Maybe you'll be looking at it differently. And if he or she can come back and say, you know what? I was being really defensive. And if they can look at it, not in the heat of the moment, but step back and reflect, I think that speaks more to recovery. I may not be the nicest person, but if I can come back and say, I didn't think I was the nicest person, now that I think about it, to me, that does speak of recovery. And over time, we become the people we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm hungry.
And we learn
to become dinner.
Yeah. Well, we learn to identify those things faster. Like, if I muff up, like, I'm pretty quick to go, oops, that was really not good. So we can learn. We're teachable. So, okay. Thank you, Dr. Rob. Thanks, everybody.
See you
next
guys
week.